are some documents that they like to share with you on the shared drive, and he'll talk more about that. But please access that as well as following along the slideshow here. So if there are Rich, give a round of applause.
Thank you, Vern. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for coming down to spend a little bit of time with me today and talk about diamonds and jewelry. So before we get going, I want to introduce myself and go through a little bit of housekeeping. You know, as we were going through the process of planning this presentation earlier in the year, there was a little something called COVID-19 that happened. Maybe some of you heard about it, and it drastically changed the way we're doing things. So that being said, you viewers at home, we're going to be offering a free hands-on demonstration after this at a later date, where we'll send you the toolkit and we'll set up a Zoom video conference where we can go through everything together. And for those of you in person today, thanks for coming down. And we have some trays that my wife Kelsey is going to be handing out. And I want you guys to look at the stuff. And if there's any questions, feel free to raise your hand at any time. And after the presentation, come up to me for one-on-one. So there is a Moisenite tray. We also have a cubic zirconia tray, a laser drill diamond tray, a fracture-filled diamond tray, and a couple of lab-grown trays. The first lab-grown tray has 3 rings in it, 1 natural diamond, 1 very, very clean lab-grown diamond, and 1 included lab-grown diamond with a black inclusion that you're going to want to look at. And when you get to this tray, look for the ring that has whiteout on it, and by that whiteout prong is where the black inclusion is. But we'll talk about that as we get further into our presentation. And then the last tray is a lab-grown pink diamond that, you know, you should see and understand that there are deceitful people out there in the world. Kelsey, if you don't mind handing out. So a little bit about myself. Again, I'm with Bluestone Trading, the president of Bluestone, and we're a diamond and estate jewelry wholesaler that was started in 1978 by my father, R.B. Grampp. And over the years, he was instrumental in growing the pawn industry and helping the jewelry industry grow as well. This includes giving presentations on Moisnite when it came out in the early 90s, and really going above and beyond, offering insight and free knowledge to help the industry grow together. So that being said, there's a few different ways you guys can maximize your profits with Bluestone. Most of you, when you hear Bluestone, you think of, you know, the go-to place to sell nice diamonds and expensive jewelry too. But there's a few other great ways you should use our services. Including, we have a vast inventory. This includes diamonds and estate jewelry and modern jewelry, and also custom jewelry that we make not only with price point jewelry such as line bracelets and inside out hoops, but also expensive and important jewelry and rings for important customers. And then of course, the main reason we're here to talk today is our knowledge center. So the next few slides are going to be of some great tools that we have on our website, and we're always uploading more information, and you should check back frequently. So before we get into our knowledge center, I want to briefly talk about recycled diamonds and how you guys can help grow your retail business and really compete with online retailers such as Blue Nile and become a known entity and a go-to retail jewelry shop in your markets. So this is a product that we've been buying and selling for decades, as you guys have well, and it's recycled diamonds. And you know, there is large profits in these products, and it's a great way to compete against online retailers and compete against lab-grown diamonds and compete against other people that are targeting millennials. These millennials typically want to be sold and romanced into something, and selling a product like recycled diamonds from your inventory not only adds that story and that value proposition, but makes you a go-to place in your markets. So our process for recycled diamonds and jewelry is we buy large parcels from pawn shops and jewelers, and we also buy jewelry closeouts from pawn shops and jewelers and other manufacturers. And we take the pieces, parts apart, we recut, repolish, sort, and clean the diamonds and jewelry, and then we upcycle them either into our natural diamond inventory or into our custom jewelry inventory, where we're able to sell natural diamonds substantially below new manufactured diamonds. And again, this is a great way for you guys to compete against Blue Nile and boost your bottom line. Getting down to brass tactics, the next few slides are of our knowledge center. And after a couple of slides, it's going to coincide directly with your Diamond Fundamentals toolkit that you have in front of you. But some of the great tools we have on our website include our virtual clarity grading guide, a carat weight calculator, and there's also a printable color trays as well as a grading booklet. The first cool slide and tool on our website is our virtual clarity chart. And this is very similar to the printed chart we've had since the early 90s. The only difference is we've digitalized it and we've added not only a picture, but also a 360 live video of the diamond. So on this slide, it's a picture of a GIS certified I2, which means it's a very imperfect diamond, as you can see by the plotting. And on the website, this is a 360 where the diamond actually spins around. And this is a great tool, not only for evaluating diamonds and jewelry coming in over the counter, but also for training your staff. I would highly recommend that when you get back, you make everybody log on and take a look at this part of the website. It's a really, really great tool, and it's helped us communicate more clearly with pawn shops when they're trying to describe things and looking for a ballpark offer over the phone or through a text message. In your Diamond Fundamental Kit, I believe on the third page, we have a weight calculator guide, and this has all the formulas required for calculating the weights of diamonds of different shapes. And I've had a lot of people request an email PDF of this, wanting to print extra copies and send it to their different shops and post it in their jewelry department. But being at the forefront of our industry, we also came up with a great idea to make a calculator app on our website. And it looks exactly like this, and it's extremely easy to use. All you have to do is select the shape of the diamond, put in the measurements, and hit enter. And it not only gives you the approximate carat weight of the diamond, but it also gives you the length to width ratio, which is imperative when we're talking about fancy shaped diamonds and understanding the value and premiums they may have. Now, another great way you should use this app is if you're looking at a loose gemstone and you think it's a diamond, but you're getting mixed results on your Moisenite or CZ tester and you're not 100% sure what it is. What you should do is measure the stone and input the information to see what it should weigh, and then put it on your carat. And if it comes within a percentage point of what the website says, you can confidently know it's substantially off the way, not a diamond. I've had a lot of people do lab-grown diamond, natural diamond, and the answer is yes. It's composition is grown in a laboratory grown from Earth. Is understanding lab reports. And this is still a common issue we're seeing on the secondary market. of the time, they don't notify if a stone has been fracture filled, laser drilled, or clarity enhanced. So being experts in the industry, we really have to pay attention and be looking at and buying the diamond, not the report. So for a fun experiment, we took one of these EGL International reports and we sent it to EGL USA and GI to see what it came back as. And the results are below. So it started as a GVS2 with very slight fluorescence. We sent it to EGL USA and they gave it IVS2 with faint blue fluorescence. And we sent it to the Godfather GI where it ultimately graded a KSI1 with medium blue fluorescence. And from a value standpoint, a legitimate KSI1 is worth 1/3 of the price of a legitimate GVS2. And why would somebody buy an EGL International GVS2 report? Very good question. And the answer is, it's typically someone that's bargain shopping all around town, and they're calling every jewelry store and every pawn shop, and they want to buy the cheapest GVS2 on the market, and they don't care what the diamond looks like, they care about the report. And so someone will call an arguably unethical wholesaler and order one of these international reports and create a big headache for the unsuspecting consumer. So getting to some of the trays going around is, the first slide is diamond versus moissanite. And I know talking about moissanite and cubic zirconia CZs for some of you in the crowd may sound kind of silly, but in all seriousness, every week we're getting packages from not only pawn shops, but also jewelers and some pocket peddler wholesalers that are shipping in moissanite or CZs, and they're claiming they bought it as diamond. So as we position ourselves to be the forefront of our industry, we believe that sharing these best practices and tips are extremely important. So that being said, diamonds we know come in all colors and all tints and all shapes and sizes. Whereas the original moissanite, or C3 as it's termed, was typically off color, JKL-ish, and it had a funky brownish or greenish or yellowish tint. And the inclusions were minimal, but the double refraction was extremely high. The issue that's come is they've created moissanite that's extremely colorless, and they got smart and realized that if they cut it extremely shallow, the additional brilliance and fire of the moissanite kind of blends in with the diamond. And if you're going too quickly or not paying attention, it's very, very easy to buy it as a diamond. So how do we tell if we don't have confidence in testers or don't want to use a tester or want to go above and beyond and become reliant on ourselves and not a tester? Very good question. So this is the tray that's going around, and it's how to detect moissanite. So what we want to do is we want to look through the star facet, which is the blue facet and the top. And we want to look at an angle down towards the culet or the point at the bottom of the stone. And depending on your eyesight, you will either see a very blurry picture like you need glasses, or you will see what's termed as the doubling effect. And what that means is moissanite is doubly refractive, where diamonds are single refractive. And so when you look under a microscope or a jeweler's loop, you will see two of everything. Two culets, two facet junctions, two pavilion mains, all across the entire spectrum. Whereas in the diamond, it's single refractive, meaning you're only going to see one bright, clean, crisp culet and facet junctions, just like in the zoomed in picture of the culet in the natural. So when we zoom out to look at the main stone, you'll see that in the diamond, everything is nice, clean, and crisp, whereas in the moissanite, there is a lot of doubling and it just looks very busy with additional colors. Questions on moissanite before we proceed? Has anyone ever bought moissanite as a diamond before? It's happened. Don't be bashful. But as long as you learn from your mistakes, that's what it's all about. moving on to the next hot topic is how to detect CZs. And this is the same slide that's going around on the CZ tray. And what we have to remember is that CZs, or cubic zirconia, is a much softer mineral than diamond. And what that means is when we go to cut a CZ, we can't cut it as clean or crisp. So we want to look at the facet junctions and the facet lines. And if you look under a microscope at the CZ, you will see that the edges are actually rounded over and they're not that crisp. Whereas if you look at the same area in a diamond, it's going to be nice, very crisp, very sharp edges, as you would expect. Yes, yes, you can. Very good question. So all of these are 10 power images, and you all in the audience have a 10 power jeweler's loop in front of you. And if you have bad lighting at your chair, the loops have the LED light in them, so you can pick it up. And CZs weigh significantly more. So if you already own the piece of jewelry, or if your customer is comfortable with you pulling it, you can put it on a scale and see that it weighs much more than it should by using our diamond weight estimator and putting in the measurements to see what it should be. CZs also have what's called the read-through effect, meaning that you can see right through them. And how you would do this is you would take the diamond and you would take it out of the setting and put it table side down on a piece of newspaper or small print, and you'll be able to read right through it. Whereas with a diamond, under normal circumstances, you won't be able to. And I say normal circumstances, meaning normal shapes. But they do make rose cuts and extremely thin diamonds in antique jewelry that you can still read through. But as a general rule of thumb, if you can see straight through the stone, it's probably not a diamond. Any questions on CZs before we go to the next part? And I see there's some questions coming in through the online portal. Some of my staff members are logged in digitally and happy to ask any questions that you guys have there. Okay, laser drill diamonds. This is a little more of a technical aspect of the diamond market, but extremely important. Laser drilled stones tend to be worth at least half of what a natural, unenhanced, undrilled stone is worth. And typically what they're doing with laser drilled stones is they're taking extremely imperfect diamonds that have big black inclusions in the center or off to the side, and visually they're just not that pretty. And they're taking a microscopic laser and they're drilling down to that inclusion. And then what they do is they give it an acid bath, and it eats all of that black carbon or other discolored mineral out of the inclusion, and it causes the inclusion to become clear or white. And again, from a visual aspect, it tends to make the stones look much nicer, but it really kills the value. And at that point, some people leave the stone as laser drilled. Sometimes people decide to fracture fill or enhance that stone, which we'll get to in the next couple of slides. But what I want to point out with this picture here is that back in the 70s and 80s, it was very common practice to laser drill diamonds of all sizes and qualities, just for the hell of it, basically. You know, whereas today's standards, if it's an extremely nice stone, we're not going to ruin the value, and we're going to sell it as an unenhanced diamond. And so this picture is of an extremely large marquee that if you look very closely underneath the side prong, there was a super small drill hole in the diamond. And this stone's certified by GIA as EBS2. So in today's market, it's an extremely expensive stone that, you know, you would never ever do this to. But again, back in the 70s and 80s, this was a common practice. It wasn't until 1992 where the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, required all enhancements to be fully disclosed. At that point, people, the general public got smart and realized what was happening and, you know, wanted unenhanced stones. But I mention this because as we're seeing a lot of family estates and grandma's jewelry coming out of that period, we're seeing a lot of stones like this. So just because it looks like an extremely clean or an extremely nice stone in a slightly older, specifically yellow gold mounting, doesn't mean that there isn't issues under the prong. again, buyer beware, even on our side of the counter. As experts, you guys want to make sure that you're really looking at every single part of the diamond and every part of the jewelry and understanding exactly what you're buying. Yes. Mm-hmm. SI2, yep. So depending on, very good question. So what Jack's asking is if we take in slightly included diamond and we fracture fill it, which we'll look at momentarily, and make it have a better visual appearance, will it grade out better? And the answer is kind of. And what I mean by kind of is that GIA and most prominent labs that you care about getting a report from don't grade fracture filled or enhanced diamonds. They will grade a laser drill diamond, and under notations they'll put, you know, a laser drill hole, but they won't touch fracture filled diamonds. They'll give you a half piece of paper saying diamond has had foreign material impregnated into the inclusions. Now, EGL, on the other hand, especially EGL USA, will give you a better report. So they will grade the diamond and as an SI1 or a VS2 sometimes, and then they will put an asterisk next to it, and under additional comments, they would say diamond graded after enhancement. The issue is that once that enhancement comes out, either by a jeweler's torch or sizing the ring or unnecessary heat, that filler melts out. But let me explain what you want to look for in the laser drilled tray, and then we'll move on to fracture filled. So the pictures on this tray are also in the handout tray going around, and it's of the actual diamond in the ring. And if you look at the picture on the right under magnification, it will look like there is many drill holes going to a few different inclusions, but it's actually only one inclusion that reflects like crazy. And you want to look at the drill hole not from the top down because you won't see it, but from an angle, and you'll see a clear white line going down to an inclusion. And what I want you to do when you get that tray in front of you is look at the ring from the side or the profile view, and you will see the drill hole going straight through from the top, almost all the way through the stone. Now, again, talking about laser drill diamonds as a whole, they're typically putting the drill hole onto a major inclusion, typically in the center or just off the center of the stone, but in rare circumstances, they're just drilling down to a very, very small piece on the edge. And what a lot of people have done, depending on the size of the stone, is you can cut that inclusion and that drill hole out, but you tend to lose a lot of weight. But that is an option, and depending on the starting and finishing size, sometimes you net a better profit. Any other questions on laser drilled before we get into lab-grown? I'm sorry, into lab-grown and fracture filled? Okay. So when we talk about fracture fill, it's important to understand not only the process, but what the before and after tend to look like. And the before tends to look something like we have on the left, where there is a big inclusion and it reflects through the stone. And if you look closely, there's also an inclusion down by the culet. And after we put the stone in a vacuum and induce a liquid leaded glass filler into the stone, it looks like we have on the right. And you'll notice that you do see some flashes of color going throughout where the inclusions were. And, you know, it's a great looking stone from a visual standpoint. The issue comes is when an unsuspecting jeweler or tradesman goes to do work on the ring, either retip a prong or resize the ring or put the diamond in a whole new ring, and they don't have the knowledge to know it's fracture filled, they will put way too much heat on it and all the filler will go out and the stone will ultimately look like it originally did. Now, it's not a big deal and it's extremely cheap to redo that enhancement, but the issue comes from fully disclosing what you're selling to your consumer. I've heard a lot of horror stories throughout the US over the past handful of years of stores being sued and literally losing everything and having to close up shop because they unknowingly, accidentally sold a fracture-filled stone and it cost them everything. And even if you have all the money in the world, to have that on your reputation and get a negative Google review of selling someone an enhanced stone or a CZ or a Moisenite, you're SOL in a big way. So a good tip on detection, and for those of you that just joined us, welcome. There are some trays going around that we're talking about on the slides. So wherever they left off, if everyone here has seen them, if you don't mind passing them to the guys that just came in, that would be great. So when we talk about fracture-filled diamonds, and we want to look under magnification at the inclusions and look for, it's termed as the flash effect. And it's typically only 1, 2, sometimes 3 colors. In the picture on the top, you'll see some purple, some pink, a little bit of blue in there. There are times where you'll see greenish blue as well, or some variation of those colors. That stone is fracture filled. And again, in the process of putting it in a vacuum, soaking out the pressure, and putting a liquid glass into the inclusions. And it doesn't just have to be a laser drilled stone. If the diamond has big feathers, like we have in this picture, this diamond was not laser drilled, it just had big cracks in the stone. That's all they need to do it. So where it becomes a little confusing is when you see the rainbow effect, or all of the colors of the rainbow as it's termed, like we see in the bottom diamond. So it's probably difficult to tell from your lighting, but if you look close, you can see all the colors. And this diamond is not fracture filled. It's naturally occurring in nature, and it deals with how the light coming into the diamond reflects off of that big crack or inclusion and scintillates back to us. And so again, if you see all the colors of the rainbow, it's natural, unenhanced. If you see only 2 or 3 colors, it's enhanced. And a good way I memorize this is I think rainbows, I think happy thoughts. Happy thoughts are, it's a natural, unenhanced diamond. So the fracture filled around intentionally made small and potentially a little more for you all to inspect in person. What we set it in a 14 karat white gold halo mounting, like I'm sure all of you buy hundreds and hundreds of a year. And you know, it doesn't look like that impressive of a ring, but that's probably where you're going to be seeing it and have the most difficulty. Again, I think if someone in here gets a 2, 3, 5, or 10 karat stone, they're going to be looking at it very closely and getting second opinions from other colleagues in the shop as well. But it's in these really small stones where you tend to make the easiest mistakes. So a stone, we took pictures loose, it's now in a ring, and if you rock it back and forth from all the angles, you will see there is just a lot of unnecessary colors. And I'm not talking about the brilliance like we have here or here, I'm talking about that. And in a zoomed in picture, I'm talking about that. And as you rock it back and forth, you're going to see it in different spots. The key thing to remember is that there isn't just going to be fracture fill in the middle of the stone. We're only fracture filling inclusions, okay? So if you see some extra brilliance, it could just be an extremely brilliant stone. We want to look for cracks or surface reaching inclusions. Now, I've had a lot of people ask the question as far as value and, you know, what do you do with these kind of diamonds? And believe it or not, there's actually a relatively big market for fracture-filled diamonds, especially with lab-grown diamonds on the market. It's actually increased the demand for natural enhanced diamonds, as people want natural diamonds, not lab-grown. So when we talk value, it depends on how much filler is in these diamonds. If it's a bigger stone, there sometimes isn't a lot of filler, and we're actually able to acid soak and boil the filler out and sell it as an unenhanced, extremely clean diamond for a big premium. But on stones like this, I can tell you from experience, if we were to take all of the filler out of that diamond and put it back to it did, it looks like complete rock salt. And that's how you should be basing buying prices on these, is think of it, worst case scenario, if it's an I3, I4, complete piece of junk. And that's more or less how these stones are sold on the market. Again, once we start getting into much cleaner stones, or as Jack mentioned, stones that look SI-ish, imperfect, natural, and then enhanced as a VS or SI1 stone, those tend to bring a pretty big price. But again, they're basing that on what the stone graded like before it was filled. Any other questions on fracture filled, clarity enhanced stones? Correct. So if we look at this slide, the top diamond that's filled, it's just feathers and cracks in the stone. So again, you don't have to have one or the other. A lot of times we'll see both in the same stone, but there's people out there that will happily buy and sell laser drilled stones, and there's people out there that will happily buy and sell fracture filled stones, but sometimes they don't commingle with each other. Again, fracture filling is not a permanent enhancement, although it's extremely cheap. The filler does come out over time, even just normal wear. After 5 or 10 years, you have to refill it. And when I talk not a lot of money, it's under $50 a carat to get it redone. So it's extremely cheap, but it's not permanent. Whereas a laser drill is also extremely cheap on a similar pricing structure, but it is a permanent enhancement. And that means that the stone will never look any better or any worse than it does after the laser drill hole. Now, what happens sometimes, and it's worth mentioning, is that if a stone has been in a ring for a very long time and it was only laser drilled and it's been polished and cleaned and polished and cleaned, it's sometimes common for jeweler's rouge or putty or other foreign substance to get into that drill hole, and it'll be a little bit deep into the stone, but it'll never fully suck into the inclusion and look like a fracture filled stone. But just food for thought as you guys are buying over the counter. It's very common to see a laser drill hole that has a little bit of dirt towards the surface, but a clean center. Okay, we're going to move on to lab-grown diamonds. And then after we get through lab-grown diamonds, I want to talk about current market conditions and what COVID-19 has done to the diamond and jewelry market. It's really rocked the world. And from our standpoint looking out, that part of the conversation is as extremely important as understanding diamond fundamentals and what drilled and filled stones look like. So lab-grown diamonds, LG. There's two processes of how it's growing. The first one is high pressure, high temperature, PHT, and they're basically taking a single carbon material and they're putting it in one ginormous press, and they're growing one stone, one piece of rough, very slowly, very quickly, and very inefficiently. They are able to grow fairly large stones, but by itself, it's not economical to mass produce diamonds. The other way, which is more common and virtually everyone that's producing lab grown for the jewelry trade is doing, is CVD, chemical vapor deposition. And the easiest way to visualize this is think of making cookies at home or muffins or whatever you'd like, where you're taking a small slice of diamond or cookie dough and you're putting it on a sheet with many other slices at the same time, and you're putting it in a giant oven basically, and you're growing the stones relatively quickly, believe it or not. And the beauty of this process is that you can mass manufacture diamonds of all the same sizes and qualities relatively quick. So you can therefore then industrialize the way you're cutting and cut a lot of calibrated diamonds with a fairly high output with not much manpower or overhead. Yes?
So usually what percentage of the slice is the grown diamond? What do they start with?
Very, very slim, substantially under 1 millimeter thick. And what happens is they will grow them to a certain point, and then they start to become brittle, and they will take all the pieces of rough out of the oven, and they will repolish every side of it and start with the bigger slice. And then they'll continue to add on. And as this technology becomes more and more widespread and more used, they're able to grow bigger stones. You know, when they first started mass producing diamonds for the jewelry purposes, they were only able to grow, you know, a 2, 3, sometimes 4 carat stone, and it was a big deal to get a 5 or 6. Now they're growing 10, 12, 14 carat stones on a regular basis, and you know, it's a very scary market. Keep in mind, this technology, by the way, has been around since the 50s. GE was lab-grown diamonds back then for lasers and microscopes and other industrial purposes way back then. It wasn't until recent times that people got smart and wanted to try and make a quick profit. So there's a couple of techniques and tips I'm going to give you today before you leave here. But at the end of the day, diamonds are bought and sold by per carat prices. And as the technology improves, so does the need to buy a machine to help you detect. You know, a lot of the included diamonds you can kind of tell, but you know, again, if most people are wanting the nicest, cleanest stone possible, they're typically cutting D-flawlesses and EVVSs and things like that. And even people in the industry can't tell the difference between natural and lab grown. So there's a few different great machines. I would recommend everyone here eventually buy one and talk to Ido about his Yehuda. It's a great product, and you know, that's where the industry is heading. So in the meantime, what you can do, and trainers have to do, if you can't justify buying a machine, or maybe you have multi-locations and can't get a machine for every location, so let's take a look. The first is always look for an inscription. Typically, they're going to be LG with a serial number, or they're going to state lab grown. A lot of times they'll even state made in the USA, as some of these companies like Diamond Foundry are pushing their made in the USA brand and trying to charge a premium and get better marketing from it. As a point, the 2 white lab-grown diamonds we have on our trays, both are inscribed with a lab-grown inscription. So you want to make sure to look for that when you get the trays. And if that tray has already passed you, come up and see me after this presentation and we'll happily look at it together. Again, I'm here to not only give you guys brand awareness, but more importantly, help educate you guys and understand what's going on in the market. Another big issue we've experienced working with over-the-counter guys is people just missing simple things such as lab-grown certificates. So on the left-hand side, we have a natural diamond report, and on the right-hand side, we have a lab-grown diamond report. And without having bubbles or highlighting it, it's very easy just to look at this and say, okay, it's a natural diamond. But when I circle things like lab-grown diamond, an inscription that begins with LG, and lab-grown IGI at the bottom, then you will see that it's actually a lab-grown report. And GI recently started making these, but them, most of the lab-grown we're seeing, and the reason is besides comparable to the manufacturer, but it's a more common certificate in India where most of these stones are being grown. But again, if you or one of your staff buyers is going through a family estate or looking at a divorce ring and they just throw you this certificate, you know, you have to really look at the whole thing. And if you make that mistake, it's shame on you for not reading everything carefully. So some other tricks on detection is the metal inclusions just look wrong. And what I mean by that is most diamonds have black carbon spots inside them, but in lab-grown diamonds, they typically look metallic in color and they kind of just float through the stone. And they're very commonly in a rod form like we have on our slide here. And they just kind of have a hard start and stop point. Now there are inclusions like this, very similar in natural diamonds, but they're called twinning wisps. And they coincide with the growth pattern of the original diamond rough, meaning that they go all the way through the stone as the octahedron or decahedron rough was grown into a pyramid. So they'll never have a hard start or stop point. They'll always go through the entire stone. So if you ever see an inclusion like this, you should be cautious. Now, again, you can also see big black inclusions in lab-grown stones that look somewhat more normalized, but if you see something like this, you should be second guessing yourself. There is a saying out there that you can just use an earth magnet to detect these stones, and the reality is that some of these metallic inclusions do have magnetic properties, but you have to remember that typically these are 1, 2, even 3 carat stones. That little bit of magnetic inclusion is so small versus the overall weight of the ring or piece of jewelry that it's not going to make a blimp. It's very rare, even if you have the stone loose and you put an earth magnet next to it, that it'll make a move. Again, it's possible, but not something that you should use as a solid telltale. So when you get to this tray, and for those of you that have seen it already, again, ask for it again, because this is extremely important. But in the zoomed in photos on the right, we have a natural black diamond inclusion, and we have a lab-grown black inclusion. And if you look at the lab-grown, it's metallic-y in nature, and it has a aura around it, like it just floats or doesn't really belong in the stone. Whereas in the natural inclusion, the black just belongs. It looks like it's part of the actual diamond rough. So when we zoom out, we can see it. It's going to be right in this general area. And when you have the ring in front of you, look for the prong that has whiteout on it, and the inclusion is going to be just left of that whiteout prong. And there's also in that tray a natural diamond with black inclusions. So you can pick both rings up and compare them next to each other. And there's also in that tray a very clean lab-grown diamond that just has a feather like you would see in a natural diamond. So what I'm saying is, just because you don't see a black inclusion like this, or you don't see any inclusion at all, doesn't mean it's not a lab-grown diamond. Again, we're buying and selling diamonds at per carat prices. Nicer stones are worth more. Do we have any questions on lab-grown diamonds so far? Yes, sir.
What percentage of the lab-grown stuff is actually
Not much at all. And as more people are getting into the lab-grown market, even less, because it's additional cost. And you know, I have seen many stones 2, 2.5 carat, 3 carat that aren't inscribed, and they either weren't inscribed because the manufacturer chose not to inscribe them in the first place, or somebody out there intentionally took the inscription off trying to trick people. And when we talk about, you know, mass-produced price point jewelry like lime bracelets with little 3, 4, 5 pointers and things like that, none of that's going to be inscribed. And I see some more questions coming in the chat. Morgan and Bluestone team, you're doing a great job answering them. So the last tray that's going around is what would appear to be a natural pink old European diamond. Ask the question again.
The question labeled. Yeah, what percentage are
A very, very small percent. And for those of you that didn't hear his question, he asked what percentage of lab-grown diamonds are inscribed or marked as lab-grown. And a very, very small percent. I would say it's probably pretty common that stones 1 carat and up are where people that are inscribing them are going to put that inscription. But again, as more factories get into the race to the bottom, as we call it, and start growing these, and they're trying to do it as cheap and cost effectively as possible, they're not going to spend the $10 or $15 to put an inscription on the stone. So they're going to leave it. And in bigger stones that should be inscribed, it's unfortunately a common practice of people getting those inscriptions removed and trying to screw you. You guys have never been screwed trying to buy something over the counter, have you? Yeah, who would do that? Yeah, Steve. Mm-hmm. To the eye, no. You either need to refer to a machine like Yehuda or the GI's machine, or you need to send it to a reputable lab. So as long as you're buying a reputable machine, you know, there's machines for $500, $600. There's a machine for $1,100 that you can, that say they're good, but they're not really that good. And even some of the machines that are good, like the GI machine, you have to understand its limitations and what the machine's capable of doing. Because if you are looking for the wrong thing or expecting to get different results than what it tells you, then it's human error, and that's on you. But correct. Overall, for a general conversation today, if you have a D flawless or an EVVS extremely nice diamond next to a natural versus a lab grown, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Some of the manufacturers can tell the difference just by slight shades and how the stone looks overall, but you know, it's not something that you or a typical pawn shop or jewelry store is going to be able to understand. At the end of the day, you're going to either need to send it to a company like us that offers free opinions, buy a machine for a handful of money, or send it to GI and get a reputable diamond report. Yes, sir, you raised your hand? Okay. No, please. Listen, I'm here for you guys today.
Are the majority of these lab-grown diamonds, are they coming from online retailers, or are they coming from like the areas of the world? Where are these?
So they're coming from everywhere. You know, Jared and Kays and Zales is owned by Signet or Sterling Jewelers, who a few years ago bought JamesAllen.com as a direct competitor of Blue Nile. And they quietly started listing a couple years ago lab-grown diamonds on their platform. And now they're out there everywhere. And the reason mom and pop jewelers are selling lab-grown diamonds is because they're seeing the dollar and profit signs. You know, as so many people have continued on without recreating or reinventing their business or really creating that personal brand awareness or personal touch, you know, it comes down to price. And, you know, with lab-grown diamonds, when they first came out, people were still making Keystone or 2.5 times Keystone on a sale. I had a local store that wanted a 3-carat HVS diamond, natural for their customer, and I quoted a stone for $40,000 wholesale to them, and they went and got a lab-grown stone for $15,000, sold it for $32,000 to the customer, and the customer was tickled pink that he saved a stack of $1,000 bills. Now, on the flip side of that, I mentioned before, it's a race to the bottom. The prices on these things keep coming down and down. It's simple economic supply and demand. As there's more out there, there's more price competition. And when these things first came out, they were being memoed and sold between 50 and 60% discount of the rack report sheet, which equates to 35% difference between natural and lab grown diamonds. And now natural diamonds that are nice are still being sold for, 35 to 40% discount, but lab grown diamonds have dropped from 50, 60% to in the mid 80s discount, being, 82, 85, 86%. And if you are a check writer for a big business or large quantity of stones as it's termed, you can get close to 90% discount. And what that means is buying a 1 carat nice diamond like an HIJ SI1 for between $500 and $800 per carat. So if you can get them for that price brand new anytime you want, what can you pay for it over the counter? You can't. And there's been a lot of pushback towards that, and De Beers created a sister company, Lightbox, and they're selling online to consumers, and they're selling for $800 per carat. And you can get them in natural blues, natural pinks, natural looking blue, pink, and white stones. And they're trying to push it as costume jewelry or fun jewelry. But back to this diamond on the screen it's a lab grown stone that they intentionally cut to look like an old European from the 18 or 1900s. And 15 years ago, we would have happily spent 6 figures on this stone. And today I bought it I overpaid and spent almost $2,000 on it. So again, buyer beware. And just because it looks old doesn't mean it's old and worth a lot of money. So do we have any questions on lab grown or anything else so far? Anything that's worth repeated? I see a lot of you taking some great notes. Correct. Yep. Yeah, it was intentionally cut to be an old cut stone, and we slapped it in an old mounting. And they do the same thing with Moisenite as well, is they'll intentionally cut them into old miners and old Europeans and put them in old jewelry, just trying to be deceptive. So if you guys haven't seen that, it's definitely worth taking a look at. Oh yeah, it's a beautiful stone. Like I said, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been jumping up and down to have that walk through my door. Yeah, it's a very wild market. So I mentioned, being the forefront of our industry. With that, we openly believe that knowledge is key and knowledge is growth, and openly sharing our knowledge with our customers who we view as team members in a long-term success to grow long-term relationships. So part of the fun equipment we use every day is a GI ID 100 synthetic tester, a GLISS Mini, which is virtually apples to apples to the Yehuda machine we have over here, an X-ray gun, and a Sarah dimension. And all this equates to is we invest not only in inventory, but also in the future. And when we had to work from home for a couple of months at the beginning of the year, we invested in company growth and employee growth. And believe it or not, we upped our marketing budget. Whereas most people we know were kind of pulling their teeth in and trying to run lean and slim and trim as possible. We believed in growth and wanted to get out there, and when things come back, we would have a much stronger foothold, and on wood, it's worked. So those of you that can have the ability to think outside the box and look towards the future and future growth, I applaud you. So this is a screenshot of the IG100 machine, and with this machine, you will get a pass or refer rating. And pass meaning it's a natural diamond, referring means you need to send it to GI to get a second opinion. And again, this machine is great at telling you it's a natural diamond, But if you use it to tell you if it's a moissanite versus a CZ versus something else, you're not going to get the results you want. They do give a 100% guarantee on the pass, but it is very common to get a pass refer grading on the same stone. And what that means is this machine is dealing with spectroscopy and how light plays and interacts with the crystal rough inside. And depending on where you hit it on the stone, you might get a different reading. But if you get a pass on the stone, they guarantee that. So you can have, you know, you're hitting it in a few different places. You can have refer, and then all of a sudden a pass. The pass is good. This next slide is of the GLISS Mini we have. Again, it looks very similar and functions very similar to the Yehuda. Different colors mean different things. And these machines are typically dealing with fluorescence and phosphorescence, or how much a stone glows and for how long after the light source is taken away. So in our pictures here, the top left is in the tray as it sits, and then the top right and bottom left are taking the picture, and then the bottom right is looking at the phosphorescence. So those 3 diamonds are lab grown versus the 2 at the top that don't glow are natural. So there's a lot of rumors going around with lab grown diamonds that they're eco-friendly and they're better for the world, better for the earth, and much better for the consumers. But the truth of the matter is both processes require massive amounts of energy to produce. And natural diamonds are the only cash crop for many third world countries like Botswana and other nations in South Africa. And these nations will never be able to have the infrastructure to have lab-grown diamond facilities or have the creature comforts we're accustomed here in the USA. And if we take away their cash crops, they'll go back to hunter-gatherer living standards, which in today's world is unacceptable. And equally as important is there's no secondary market for lab grown at this point. As we previously talked about, the price of this stuff brand new is so cheap that it doesn't make sense to get involved with it on the secondary market. And you know, when we're talking milli prices, you can get new manufactured milli for plus minus 100 per carat in large quantity. And you know, if you can get it that cheap, what can you pay for a parcel of 5 or 10 pointers on the secondary market that are chipped and dinged up? You know, there's no true value to them. And prices keep dropping. Any questions before we get on to, you know, what's happened in the market and what we're seeing now and what we're projecting? Has everyone here had a chance to see all of the trays? Okay, great. So to understand what happened to the diamond and jewelry market as a whole during all of this, we have to take a step back and really understand where we came from and what was going on in the jewelry world before we talk about today and tomorrow. And some of this may not seem like it's important to you guys here, but ultimately, you are some of the people that are helping to set these prices on diamonds and jewelry. As you're the ones putting a valuation on the secondary market, it's important for you guys to understand what's going on and you guys to have a pulse. You know, I have invested a lot of time into this part of our business, and I'm a member of the DMIA, Diamond Manufacturers and Importers Association. And what that means for you guys here is that I probably know more than most of you will ever want to know. And I can't tell you how many phone calls I get every day of people just calling and looking for input and advice on not only on what something is or what it's worth, but what's going on in the marketplace. So industry pre-COVID, 29 holiday retail sales were very strong. We saw a 4% increase in brick and mortar and 15% online sales. And what this means is that we had a very strong Q1 in 2020. And this positive outlook led many companies of all sizes, from big manufacturers and diamond site holders, all the way down to pocket peddlers and mom and pop retail stores, to buy heavily, either on credit or with cash, in hopes of making great sales throughout the year. And then suddenly the entire world was put on hold. The entire market shut down throughout the world. You know, there's a lot of people that had liquidity issues. There was a famous story earlier in the year where Dominion Mine in Canada filed for insolvency, owing $550 million secured debt to its creditors. And what that means is, even though they had a huge inventory and they should have all of these customers, they ran out of money. And because all of the diamond bourses and everyone was literally locked out of their office buildings, they couldn't get money from anywhere. So they filed insolvency, and there's a lot of common stories like that. Today, right now, we are buying a lot of inventories from bank foreclosures and people that just couldn't weather the storm. I mentioned factories closed for a month and diamond offices closed for a month. Some of the big buildings in New York and in LA and Chicago and throughout India, they literally deadbolted the doors and people couldn't get into their offices. Even if they left their wallet or their keys in their office, overnight they couldn't get in. And then after all of that happened, Mr. Rappaport decided to lower prices across the board. And this created a fury of anger and rage and lots of nasty words throughout the industry. As, you know, it was probably due for an adjustment, but the fact he did it after everyone was closed and couldn't have time to make adjustments or changes really, really offended a lot of people. Then this thing called stimulus money started happening, and we had a lack of travel. So consumers were looking for places to pump money, and they decided to do it into retail. And we have seen extremely strong retail sales. I know when we first started working from home at the beginning of March, compliments of our governor, we were expecting to have a buying frenzy and, you know, really people stress selling, as it's termed, and needing cash and having liquidity issues. But the fact of the matter is it hasn't really hit. In the past few weeks, we've seen a change, but overall things have been very, very strong. And because of manufacturers, for the most part, are still closed, there is supply issues on the markets and very low inventory on select desirable items, being, you know, nice diamonds and nice jewelry. Those of you out there that have, you know, parcels of brown and black diamonds and junk, sorry, you're still SOL, but on sellable, useful merchandise, don't be embarrassed to ask a premium. And interestingly, major site holders are playing into this. So De Beers and Alrosa, two of the biggest site holders and manufacturers in the world, have unanimously decided to slowly sell off inventory instead of the projected big sell-offs they were planning on doing to play catch up for the year. They're seeing that these strong prices and strong demand is really helping keep the market upbeat and things moving, and that's what their long-term projection is. And, you know, because of that, there is a lot of positive outlook, short-term, mid-term, on the diamond and jewelry world. And in our experience, businesses with strong marketing and brand exposure remained and are continuing to remain busy. You know, I mentioned that we pumped up our marketing budget in March and have kept it strong this whole time, and it's really paid off. And I've talked to a lot of shops, both in the jewelry and pawn sector, that had the same philosophies, and it's paying off for them as well. So long story short, don't be scared to spend a little bit of money to potentially make a lot of money. How many people saw their loan levels drop off like crazy? Yeah, we saw the same thing as well. Interestingly enough, we had a long clientele list of pawn shops that got smart and they utilized us for price full of inventory. And we went from getting packages every day from shops and jewelers wanting to sell us dead inventory or loaned inventory to all of a sudden sending packages every day to pawn shops of price point jewelry that they could put in their cases. And a lot of these stores, because of their branding and marketing exposure and online presence, they were doing weekly reorders from us. And some of those stores today are still doing the same thing. So, you know, that's interesting. There's the 20-20-60 rule, and 20% of the people are out there being active and hungry and making things happen. 20% have their head in the sand and just ignoring the world. And the other 60% are just standing there shaking their head with their hands up, not sure what to do. And in times like this, you want to make sure you're in the top 20%. Moving and shaking and not waiting for things to come, because they might not. You have to be active. And you have to utilize your resources and your relationships and connections with people, not only people like me, but also other vendors and wholesalers and people in your network that can really help you take your business to the next level. So getting back to business and where we kind of are now and where we're projecting at least through Q2 of next year until tax time, is that states, as they reopened and continue to stay open, are getting immediate inflows of new business as consumers are more comfortable and content going into to shops and going into the general public and feeling more safe. Prices are staying strong on premium merchandise, not only diamonds, but jewelry and, you know, these things we call guns, you know, are going through the roof. And what was interesting is now that the stimulus checks have run out, it's forcing people to take loans again. But I have a question for you guys. How many of you see pawn levels up to where they were, and how many are still way off? Still way off. So I think that's going to be very interesting to track. I'm not sure how many of you are, you know, really pay attention to those figures and analytical data, but and as things are getting back to the new normal, some stores are using their time more wisely and really focusing on customer experience and, you know, focusing on man hours and really running a streamlined shop. And we're feeling this on our side of the world because a lot of our business is on the memo business or consignment, meaning you have a call for a diamond or a piece of jewelry and we'll send you a care package of stuff. You show your customer, and if you make a sale, you send us a check with the stuff they didn't buy. And historically, this is what Bluestone has always done and, you know, tried to stay ahead of the curve with. But what's interesting is we typically had, you know, a 50-60% closing ratio on sending a package of consigned merchandise out to stores pre-COVID. But since COVID, we're running a 90-95% closing ratio, meaning that the stores we're doing business with are valuing their time very seriously and, you know, taking things very serious and making that customer experience and customer satisfaction a high priority. So as we get to the end of my presentation here, we have a decent amount of time left for a Q&A, and I have some questions of my own I want to ask you guys. And I find that when coming to presentations and seminars and events like this, I get most input out of not only these presentations up here, but from general Q&A and conversations with you guys as a whole. And hopefully you all get the same. So I think I already asked the question, but most of you saw your loan book shrink. What did you guys do to generate business? Okay. And where were
buy more new inventory.
where were you getting your new inventory from?
Firearm dealers for the most part.
Got it.
Shotgun guns, I mean, except stuff that people were using while they were
Yeah, we heard that entertainment, Xboxes and PlayStations and stuff sold like hotcakes as well. Is everyone here have an FFL license for guns? Does anyone here not have it? Okay. I would be curious to hear what they were doing as well. Besides focusing on retail, is there anything else you guys were doing to create customer experience? And how did that work for you? Is anyone here not on social media? And I can't see any of the questions from our virtual viewers. So if someone's handling those, that would be great. Okay. Did anyone think outside the box and try and offer additional customer experience? Either sending, solicitation phone calls or just check-in phone calls and touch points with their customers. How are you doing? How is your family? How is the health? Or was anybody going as far as to offer free pickup and delivery services?
We had several clients that did that. A couple here in Florida were doing curbside, and we're also reaching out to folks that hadn't been in it quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing if they had any needs or if they were looking for cash. They were inundating a bunch of the scrap gold built up. Some of that, but that's something we had pushed. There's a consulting firm we didn't see a lot of.
Yeah, we have a chain of stores that deals in a very prominent area that most of the clients are 70 and plus, and they were pretty much stalemated on both the buying and selling side because their customer base wasn't comfortable going out in public. So they set up mandatory sales calls or check-in calls, as they term them, every day, and they started doing free delivery and pickup services, and it ended up being so lucrative that they've changed some of their normal business focus into offering that service. So again, just like we talk with marketing and online exposure, customer experience is going to be key. And you have to create a reason for them to want to come to your store instead of Joe Schmo's pawn shop down the street and deal with you as a person. How many are investing in retail jewelry marketing? Not many. We're starting to see some, mostly on the coast, not so much in mid-America, but this is an area where you guys should really shift some of your focus and can potentially grow your business in a big way. I mentioned these millennial shoppers are going towards lab-grown diamonds and mind-right diamonds because they're trying to buy a story, a song and dance, and they're also trying to be eco-friendly. But you guys have an incredible inventory in each of your stores that if you were to shift some of your focus, you could attract a lot of that attention and keep stores in your office or store versus losing them to online retailers. Is everyone back to loaning? Is anyone not back to loaning? And does anyone see themselves spending money in marketing loaning? And what are you doing? Okay. And how is the text messaging working? Okay. He mentioned Facebook Marketplace. Is everyone doing business on Facebook Marketplace? Yeah, it works great. We see that it works much better than Craigslist or some of the other online forums. Since the beginning of this. And what are you guys going to be doing differently from here on out?
We're trying to be more in touch with other business owners, commerce, other bartering sites, things of that nature. The everyday person doesn't seem to be as encouraged as the business is. So we can be in there as a vehicle for small loans, maybe at a reduced interest rate for a small business owner that maybe going out of business, might be more safe to business and still get out.
Yeah, it's all about connections. Just like in my business, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know who to ask the right questions to. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. For those of you that didn't hear, or those of you virtually, the comment was made that they went to local restaurants in the area and bought a few $100s worth of $10 gift cards to not only help the restaurant, but give them out to customers and, you know, help the community as a whole. I heard also being a member of Chamber of Commerce. Is everyone here a member of their local Chamber of Commerce or BNI networks? You know, if you're not, it's something you should definitely look into, is growing and becoming an asset of your community. I've also seen people, you know, sponsor Little League and sports events and things like that, and just, you know, being able to give back to the community. Something we as a company are doing this year, and we'll probably continue to do it next year as well, is that a portion of all of our proceeds we're donating to food banks throughout the USA. And, you know, as being the person that's writing those checks and sending them to communities, it feels really, really great to be able to give back to the community and help support people. Yes. I think a lot of stores there's going to be a lot of changes. His question was that pre-COVID, there has been reports of upwards of a couple thousand jewelers close shop and either go bankrupt or retire every year, and what's happening now because of that. And I will tell you that people are realizing they don't necessarily need the footprint that they have. And what we're starting to see a lot of is some of these big, beautiful jewelry stores are going to more boutique operations, or they're going into office buildings by appointment only. And they're trying to utilize their resources, assets, and time, and become a more efficient organization. And to directly answer your point, we're seeing a lot of jewelry stores that just can't weather the storm. Yeah, I mean, that's a very common thing as well.
Something we're working with in the consulting group too. We're getting more calls of people saying we want to convert our jewelry store and add it as a service, either buying handbags or buying, buying customers more than we have in the past.
I'll tell you, part of our success as a company is over the past few years, we've launched an estate buying division at Bluestone, where we're actively going out and buying entire store inventories and buying jewelers and pawn shops out. And, we're not your average wholesaler, diamond dealer in that regards, is that, we don't want to go and cherry pick the nicest few things in your store. We want to buy everything from, ghetto jewelry and 10-karat cluster rings up to rare and signed vintage pieces. And because of that, we have a huge inventory that we've really helped you guys, stay in business by having price point products to sell. And we are getting a lot of phone calls from stores of all sizes saying, listen, I'm running out of money here and I want to try and keep it going, or I'm running out of money and I've decided that I just want to cash in while I'm ahead. And a lot of people are closing. And the ones that aren't spent money in online foot traffic and marketing and, really customer experience. Has anyone else had any stroke of genius during this past 6 months? Or have anything new they're going to try going forward? Yeah, so we can talk about that after this one-on-one, absolutely. But I think, as the comment was made, jewelers are wanting to become pawn shops. Pawn shops are now going to have to shift some of their focus to become a jeweler. Otherwise, they're going to miss out on the boat. And just like you see, go ahead.
We have a question. They want to take the 5 jewelry directly for you to sell at your shop.
So that's what we're talking about. Yes, is unlike the typical wholesaler or diamond buyer in this industry that just wants to buy, we have a huge inventory. Really any and everything you could ask for. And, as I mentioned before, we were shipping packages out to pawn shops every day of the week that were buying jewelry from us, putting it in their display cases and making a healthy profit and keeping sales in their store. Yes. Mm-hmm. Correct. And March 20th, Rappaport, for the first time in a long time, made an adjustment to his pricing sheet. Everyone here familiar with the Rappaport price list? So there's a round sheet and a fancy sheet. It says pairs on it, but it's really for all the other shapes. And on March 20th, after everything got shut down, all the bourses were closed, he basically took the entire sheet and lowered it by 10%. And it caused a huge uproar, and a lot of companies, including a lot of major companies, delisted their inventory from RappNet. And his site went from inventory listed to under $2 billion in virtually a weekend. That's unethical, and this isn't right. And you shouldn't be cutting our throat after we're already, swimming in the deep end. Yeah, it's given a lot of opportunity wholesale only websites to come up, and there was a major pushback on it. Today, people have gone back to listing their inventory, but definitely nowhere near those levels. And a lot of people still don't acknowledge that price decrease. A lot of people are still referring to the March 6th pricing structure. Since then, it's gone up twice this past week, and then about a month ago, there was increases on the price sheets. They're still, when you look at them side by side, they're still down, but
The reason I bring that up is because I remember using the rap sheet
yeah.
a lot. It was really heavy on the baseline and the standard, and if we're using that, we're aware that the price is down, especially when they use scratch preparation process.
Absolutely. Again, when we talk nice sellable merchandise, I'm not talking about, a 1 carat I3 rock salt stone or a 10 carat cluster ring, but, if you have a nice 1, 2, or 5 carat stone or, a really nice piece of jewelry, don't be embarrassed to up it. Right now it's supply and demand, and manufacturers aren't supplying and cutting new rough and new diamonds. So people are relying on secondary markets to make things happen.
The question online is kind of an answer, but the question was if we were to purchase some of the things from you, what kind of markup can we expect to sell things? Because markup is we're looking about 2 times, 3 times markup kind of thing. So how would you answer that to the other people that might be asking the same thing?
Well, I would happily buy everything back at 95 cents on the dollar. But all joking aside, it depends on your market. And this is where you as a business owner or a store manager has to do a little bit of R&D and footwork and see what competitors are doing in your area. And you should have a different margin for a piece of jewelry that costs a couple $100 versus a $20,000 ring. But I would say as an average, we're hearing people are making 30 to 50% margin. And we do multi-line productions of stud earrings and extremely price point jewelry and cheap bracelets and things like that, and diamond by the yards and hoop earrings that we're selling wholesale for, a couple $100 plus minus each. On that stuff, you can make keystone easily. And it's brand new jewelry, it's brand new findings. We tend to buy the best findings on the market, and we put our recycled diamonds from our recycled diamond program in them, and we're selling them as brand new jewelry at a fraction of the price of a traditional new manufacturer. Very good question. So keystone means 200% markup, essentially doubling your money. So if you buy a pair of earrings from me for $200, you can sell it for keystone, which is $400. And triple key is triple times. But keystone and a half are very common and very comfortable numbers when you're dealing with cheaper price points. But again, you have to keep in mind that your cost of doing business is going to be the same whether you're selling a $300 thingamajig versus a $5,000 thingamajig. And a lot of people don't understand that, and they don't take that into consideration when they're doing their pricing structure, that you should be making more margin on cheaper stuff because it costs you the same. Any other questions or comments or talking points I can help you guys answer today? Make it a good one. Okay. That is a good question, and we did not. Yeah, that's a very good question. So there is a product out there that has many different names, from fire ice to this and that, but long story short, what it is it's Moisenite coated with diamond. And they're taking diamond dust or remnants of polishing stones, and they're coating moissanite with it. So it will fool a lot of testers. I'm not sure if it fools your tester or not, but you know, a lot of the cheaper units it will fool, and if you're not careful to really look for double refraction, it will fool you as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's out there in a big way. Oh yeah, that's nothing to mess with. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's just, you know, I've seen, you know, call me a weirdo, I don't know, but sometimes I watch jewelry TV just to see what kind of scams and things are going out there. And they sell a lot of that product out there. And, you know, they sell it at huge retail margins. And again, it has a big song and dance and a big allure and a big aha with it. But at the end of the day, it's not worth anything. But so many people buy that stuff and, you know, ultimately bring it to pawn shops to sell. And you guys have to know to look for it. Well, unless there's any other questions from the audience or online, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Vern. If you guys felt embarrassed about asking something in the open, come up to me. I'll be here through the rest of the week and happily talk your ear off anything diamond jewelry related. Also, we'll be here spending money and buying any diamonds and jewelry you guys have. Even if you just want an opinion on something you brought and you're not sure what to do with it or what it's worth or what have you, ask me. And again, we at Bluestone Trading offer the same great service over the phone and through text as we offer here in person. So don't be bashful. Next week, next year, next month, next decade, we'll be here and we're always happy to help. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Now, don't you're going to take my ego from here up to here. But thank you. I like it.
So we are technically on break. There will be food served in about an hour. Food and drink. You can stay here. I definitely recommend taking advantage of the knowledge that's right here. Ask some questions. We'll leave the online streaming as well too. You can ask questions that way. And then over there. You've got both of these guys here that kind of mirror each other and have a great symmetry. And you guys have the opportunity to ask great questions. So otherwise, you're on break. We'll see you back in an hour. We'll have some food and drink.
Thank you.
Let's kill the big one.
Those of you still on virtual, thanks for logging in. It was great spending the afternoon with you. Bye-bye. We had a couple before, before we came back. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please. If you guys have any questions on these as well. Maybe better pictures